and I would like to thank Neil to invite me to come here. Before I will give you my personal experience on my view on vaccine, I'd like to tell something good about my good friend Neil. When I met him, he told me that he would like to change Pattaya into cultural city. And in the near future, we hope to be able to bring in Pattaya Film Festival. And I like the foreigners to enjoy learning about our culture, not barrier or post-fusion. And I thank COVID for allowing this to happen. Okay. Now, let me be frank with you. I never believed in vaccine myself. However, because according to the government and travel ban, I will need to receive vaccination. The reason I do not quite strongly believe in vaccine because most of the vaccine has been developed in a very short period of time. Normally, as you know, we will need at least 2 or 3 years to do what we call preclinical and clinical study and field study. But because of they put down as an emergency vaccine. So some of the vaccine has been approved only within about less than a year after they did some limited study. So please be aware. There will be some unexpected event that may be happening. Having said that, if we are well informed, like I did for myself, and I will share with you today, do not worry too much once we learn more. I would like to suggest that for those of you who have not yet received vaccination, you will need to receive it because when you go back to your country or return back to Thailand, if you don't receive vaccination, it might be difficult. Now, let's start with the vaccine that Thailand is offering now. As you know, it's called Sinovac and AstraZeneca. I would not like to comment anything much more than saying that if you can allow to receive free vaccine, please select only AstraZeneca. I do not want to discuss why I do not recommend Sinovac. Okay. Now, right now, because Thailand will need to open the country for foreigners to come. Otherwise, we will have a lot of financial problems. Therefore, I have been involved with Phuket, Chiang Mai, and Pattaya. For Phuket, it just started on the 1st of July. However, some of the problems that I have heard from my government made me wondering because they keep changing almost every day. And I do not want to become political involved, but I like to tell you that many doctors, including me, will not let that happen. And even though right now I was surprised, even though I did receive the first shot of AstraZeneca, and I want to visit Chiang Mai, they told me that I need to be quarantined for 14 days. I tell them for what? Therefore, as of next week, I will travel to Chiang Mai and protest to them that if I have every proof that I'm healthy, and then why they have to quarantine me. So for foreigner as well. At first they say that you don't need to be quarantined. Later on they say that they will ask you to do quarantine for 7 days. And then they said 14 days. So I was really surprised. If they encourage us to receive vaccination, and even with vaccination, we need to be quarantined. That's no reason and no reasonable judgment on top of that. So allow Thailand to work inside about our problem, but I reassure you that starting from July, you will be able to get what they call alternative vaccine. Okay, so right now, Sinopharm, Moderna will be available. There have been rumors that I'm not sure that Thailand will receive Pfizer this month, 1.5 million. So I have heard government say that, but they may change. So I also would like to tell you that Sputnik and Johnson & Johnson will soon become available. Any vaccine that you would like to receive, please study. It's our life. We don't need someone to tell us that we must take Sinovac, we must take AstraZeneca, we must take Sinopharm. So therefore, please carefully read more and do not read too much on social media, which have been promoted without any published evidence. I have planned with no conflict of interest to review about the vaccine, and I probably can be able to send as a gift to your club member as an e-book. I probably can finish it with around 1 week. So anyone would like to be access to e-book, then we can use it. And this I will make only the published literature from reputable sources, not even my judgment. Okay, so that's what the first thing about vaccine. Now, for Pattaya, because Pattaya will need to open very soon, and I'm sure that I have talked to the governor. He is ready also to get the vaccine, which also includes for expats. So, just to make long story short, if you are able to get AstraZeneca from the government, that will be free of charge. You can work out how to register it through the hospital or what. But for alternative vaccine, I would like to offer by giving your name and telephone number and your nationality. That's all I need. And give it to maybe Neil or someone can take care of. After I've been able to find you the vaccine, then I will let you know where and when you will receive the injection. Most likely, next month it can be done in Pattaya itself. But if you want to do quicker than that, I will need you also to go to Bangkok. Because in Bangkok, one of the hospital I work with called Be Away, I have asked them to support the Thai and expat to be able to receive the vaccine of their choice. We will charge only the fee of injection 100 baht on top of the cost of the vaccine. So that's what I like to tell you. So before I move to another topic, any question on vaccination that you would like to ask? Please go for vaccination, please.
Yes, I already have 2 shots of the Sinovac. Can I have another one with Moderna?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now I like to add that I have finished developing one of the tests to prove that you are immune against COVID-19. That can be done probably next 2 weeks. So if you have already two shots and you want to know whether you are immune or not, I can collect the blood test. The cost of the test will be around 1,000 baht something. If it proves that you do not have enough immune, you must go for the first shot. But if you already have been immune enough, you don't need.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Microphone.
Excited. Patty Memorial last month took 4,000 baht from people who wanted to sign up. At the time, they said probably would not be available Moderna until October. Do you have any more recent information about what specifically Patty Memorial is doing?
Okay. Okay. I will explain you. With the vaccine that I will support you, I don't need you to pay ahead of time. But many private hospitals, they collect the money before they even can tell you whether you receive the injection or not. Personally, I'm against that concept because the hospital will need to tell you when they are going to give you the injection and how much it will cost, not ask you to deposit the money. And what happens is that if they cannot get the vaccine, they just return you the money. I think it's unfair to the patient that they collect the money without can tell you when. Okay, if they want to do it in October, they should collect the money not more than 1 month before that. It's unfair to collect it now. I'm not discussing any hospital, but I suggest that if they cannot tell you when you can get the vaccine, do not work with them. I can help you better than that. And you just pay only when you know when you can get it. Yes.
Last week in the Zoom meeting, you were talking about blood pressure, and with respect to older people, blood pressure will be higher. And I can't remember if you said 116/90 or 160/90.
Okay, 160 over 90.
160.
Yes, over 90.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, but if I had blood pressure that high, I'd be dead by now.
No.
It's
You're
too
wrong.
high.
What I mean is that when most old people, we tend to have higher blood pressure than younger people. I just want to tell you that for old people, 160/90 is acceptable. And most hospitals will not allow you to do the injection if your blood pressure reading is higher than that.
Yeah, I still have a problem with that because I had a stent put in my heart and I monitor my blood pressure regularly. And if it goes above 140, I record it in a program and I get a red flag to say my blood pressure is high. I can't believe that 160/90 is acceptable.
Okay, after the meeting, I will give you the explanation in more details because for the general audience, 160/90 is acceptable for all people, but if you are still young, it's 120/80. Okay, so I will also explain you after the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions on the vaccine?
This one away.
Yes, please, at the back.
Hello.
Yes.
I'm very grateful that you're giving us the vaccination. How soon or when can I get vaccinated?
Okay, I cannot talk in public, but I can assure you that you will get it by next month, the latest.
Okay, so what do we do?
Just register the name. Let me know about your request. No need to pay yet.
Okay. Good morning, Doctor. I've had my 2 AstraZeneca shots. I'm quite concerned about the Delta variant. What should I get now to top that off for immunity for the Delta?
Okay, that will be quite complicated question, but I like to remind you again that the best way to do is I can help to check whether you have immunity against COVID-19.
That's all COVID, or
Yes.
am I specifically worried about the Indian variant?
I have to tell you that this is my own personal experience. We have been bombarded with a lot of false information because the government, not only Thailand, they try to control us. They create fear. I can tell you that later on, maybe Oscar, you can share your view. So don't worry too much about Delta, Epsilon, but just make sure that you have enough immunity against COVID-19, which is specific for spike protein. Yeah, in the back, please.
You said you did not want to discuss why you would not take the Sinovac. What generally is the risk of balancing the risk of side effects from this vaccine against relying on our own immune system?
Okay, personally, if I were to develop this vaccine, because it's airborne, I would like to test on vaccine given by inhalation. The Chinese has been able to start, I forgot the name that they're using, but I'm quite sure that if you inhale instead of injection, that might be more effective. And for your information, but it will take me at least 6 months to be able to do so. I'm working on the vaccine from tobacco. It's called tobacco virus vaccine. They are now working on giving in injection, but I prefer to do it on inhalation and it goes direct to the lung. That's what my idea. The reason that I do not believe in injection intramuscularly because what it did is create your immune system called white blood cell. And it will take some time for them to go around to your lungs. Why not take care of the lungs basically? Because this kind of airborne viruses, you will be contact through the lung. So I believe more on giving the vaccine by inhalation. However, the FDA does allow me to give it right away. It takes me at least 6 more months to be able to achieve that.
Thank you.
Yes, doctor. What about mixing different vaccines? I also signed up for the Moderna in October, but if I took AstraZeneca, let's say next month, is that okay? Or are there some issues that are not appropriate?
Okay, I think that, again, I have to say that this is my personal experience. At the beginning, when I first gave a talk, I told you that if you go with any vaccine, you have to repeat it with the same type of vaccine, if you can remember. Now, because of the government in many countries, including Thailand, they do not have enough vaccine to give. So therefore, they are trying to postpone. They can tell you that when you give injection, usually you need to receive the second dose should be done 4 to 6 weeks. But because of lack of vaccine, the government doctors, they say, put that way, they tell you that 8 weeks will be okay. Now they can even tell you 3 months will be okay. This doesn't go with any published evidence. So for me, my second dose after AstraZeneca, I will take it within 6 weeks. That's what my suggestion. Now, because the vaccine is different, so if you want to mix the vaccine, the one that has been proved by research is AstraZeneca followed by messenger RNA vaccine. That it creates better immunity. So that based on research, that is okay if you take AstraZeneca. The second shot can be Moderna or Pfizer. Sir?
Yeah, my name is Uli. I don't like to get those injection or vaccination. Could it be possible that the regime or somebody else say to me, you must do it, I have to do it because I don't like it? Can they pressure me to do it?
I believe in human rights. Let me repeat again. If I'm not a traveling doctor, I will refuse to take vaccine. I will take Thai herbs to prevent me. I have evidence to prove that it doesn't cause any side effects. And I don't even like to wear a mask. But being a doctor, I need to wear. However, I'm using something, I'm not trying to sell you this. This is negative ion that can work better than wearing a mask. The negative ion can dissipate around my body about 1 feet. So it can prevent the COVID virus and the bacteria to come in. Now, if for those of you who live in your house and you also protect yourself by social distancing and also wearing masks or whatever, that may be enough for you to live by without having to do injection. However, I have to insist that if you need to travel, you will need to do the injection only for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I'm one of the lucky 250 people who went to Bangkok Patty Hospital and paid $3,400 for the 2 Moderna vaccines. And what it stated was good from November through the end of January.
Mm-hmm.
That's the time period that they're hoping to get it. Where can I get an AstraZeneca this week in Pattaya?
That
After we'll talk.
we have to discuss not openly.
Yeah, that's the main thing I wanted. Thank you.
Okay, I have to tell you because I still need to take care of the Thai citizens, so I cannot tell you that. But there are always something left. Okay.
What's your opinion on favipiravir, the antiviral drug from Fuji Chemicals, which has been on the market since 2014? I believe it has very positive results here in terms of early symptoms. Does it work?
Yes. Okay. Let me now move the topic from the measure from vaccination. After the meeting, if you still have any question on vaccination, you can check with me in person. Okay. Now, let me tell you, the other measure that I think is work better than vaccination is to provide immune system to protect ourselves. Starting from the year 2009, at that time there was an outbreak of H1N1 in Thailand. I was one of the pioneers to develop the Thai herbs derived from a local plant called plu khao. Plu khao is like a vegetable that northern people they eat it. The active ingredient is called quercetin. Okay, and I did continuously until now. This product has the active substance to destroy coronavirus, influenza virus, and also hepatitis virus as well. It's very simple. You have to understand what is the characteristic of virus. Just to repeat, coronavirus is RNA virus. When you have RNA virus, you also have DNA virus. Okay. DNA virus usually cause local problem. Are you familiar with herpes simplex? Like you have blister in the mouth, or herpes zoster, the one that causes pain in the nerve. That's DNA virus. So that one will not be contaminated with other people unless you have very close contact with them. But RNA virus, most of them are respiratory tract disease virus. So RNA virus can spread faster. Now, the difference between DNA virus and RNA virus is that DNA virus does not need to make too much copy. So they do not have so-called mutation. So therefore, if you want to treat DNA virus like herpes or herpes zoster, acyclovir, if you have heard about that, will be remain effective forever. But unlike RNA virus, they mutate almost every day. So don't worry too much about the variant they're talking about. I believe that if someone spread the news, they only cause you fear. Okay, believe me. The vaccine production people, they will sell vaccine forever for COVID-19, COVID-21st, COVID-22nd, COVID-23rd, and they will tell you that now you have Delta variant, you have Epsilon variant. That's not really accurate. It's the way to create fear, to make people buy the vaccine. And then you will need to be injected almost every year. Therefore, please try to understand that when they don't impose too much on vaccination, I will tell you my idea. I will need to do only 2 vaccination. And I will check my immune. Because I'm using herbs, my immune system will go up. And I can show to every government that I'm well protected. And I will receive what we call vaccine passport. So that's all I need to travel around. Okay? And I can be the living proof that I will not be able to get COVID-19 because I use some of the measures, such as improve my immune system, like I told you about the herbs that I have talked to you. Now, with the product called favipiravir, it's actually developed by the Japanese scientists in the year 2015. They use it for treatment of influenza virus, and they now try on COVID-19. It works, but you should not use this product for prevention of COVID-19 because it does contain some side effects if you take for too long. You should take it only for about 7 days to get rid of the symptom. So I have no objection for any hospital to use favipiravir for treatment only. I'm not so sure whether any of you know about the Thai herb called Fa Thalai Jon. Have you heard about that?
No, not that one.
Okay, Fa Thalai Jon is commonly promoted. That should not be used for prevention as well. Because Fa Thalai Jon, if you take for more than 2 weeks, it may contribute to some side effect, especially the weakness of your extremities. So you have to understand that for favipiravir, also the new one that the Merck company will produce called monopiravir. It's meant only for treatment, okay, not for prevention. For prevention, please look for the herbs, the one that I talked to you, called quercetin and kachai khao. This is also coming up very soon. That can be used for prevention as well as for treatment. Yes.
There's a lot of debate currently about ivermectin, about it being very successful in India and in other countries.
Yes.
What's your view on ivermectin? Because I believe there's more negative evidence than positive. Is that right?
Okay. I have to tell you my background as well. I'm also receiving MD degree and PhD in pharmacology. So I'm the right one for this question. Ivermectin has been used for treatment of the wound. Okay. I prefer to use the one that have drug target therapy. So, first of all, ivermectin, they do not yet know what are the exact mechanism. And that can be risky because of without knowing it. how can you predict whether it works? So let me tell you that if you want to read for any product, first you have to check whether they have proof that they are effective against COVID-19. The best way that I develop my product is to test in vitro first on the virus, whether it can destroy virus. At the same time, I will compare with cell culture from normal cells. So the first proof that I can show you that it can destroy virus without affecting normal cells. So that's better. And we have to be able to tell how can we kill or destroy virus. Virus has been protected by protein called envelope. And you have heard about spike protein, which causes the infection. There has been one specific enzyme called 3C-like protease enzyme. So any product that can inhibit that enzyme will prevent virus to form itself. So that's why you have to have scientific evidence, not hearsay. So that's what I like to really tell you about, that you need to read and look for the paper that proves that it works. And safety must come first. Okay? Yes.
Regarding ivermectin, I wanted to ask, but he beat me to it. I am from India, and in different states in my country, ivermectin prophylaxis has proved very, very effective. There is anecdotal evidence regarding the efficacy of the drug. However, for reasons, formal reasons, CDC and FDA have not been able to ratify that drug. It is a repurposed drug, and it does not mean that just because the CDC has or FDA has not approved, it is not effective. So the world now, by and large, believes that ivermectin is the best prophylaxis you can have when you cannot get a vaccine.
Yeah.
Till you get a vaccine, you are better off taking ivermectin about 12 mg every month. That has been the broad experience from India.
Okay, let me share with you my comment. Because I do have some local products which can be easily available. But for international market, I also support ivermectin if you can find it. Now, because there have been enough evidence that it works and also can prevent spread of disease as well. However, I have to tell you that I'm coming from conventional medicine, but I have changed my attitude by learning that we do not need to tell the patient what to do. We have to learn and respect other professionals as well. That's why I always support alternative medicine. And however, having said that, conventional medicine control medical council and also FDA. And that's the reason why it's not easy for me even to promote the herbs that I have developed to use it in Thailand hospital. But I will not stop. I will fight until my last bite. Okay, before I take any question, because we have some limited time, I bring along one of my friends. Recently I just met him, but he's the one also who told me that he loved my country and he liked to live in Thailand. So I promised him in return that I will make his life here more pleasant. And he also did a lot of study. He can share with you also about ivermectin, correct?
Can.
Oscar, please take the floor.
All right, Dr. Campbell, thank you for those nice words. I was joking before that, but considering how how the first part of this presentation went. I was joking that I've never prepared a talk before where I expect half the people to leave sort of halfway through. There are some push-button topics, one of which in particular that I wish to discuss, wish to share with you. As Dr. Kampon touched upon, we live in times where we have a serious breakdown in the supply of information. It's quite worrying, and the effect of this is that critical information does not reach the general public. Misinformation does reach, as it seems, the general public, and that is a problem. I was delighted to meet with Dr. Kampon, as he said, very recently, where he announced that it is his intention, and he's working on forming a consortium where we can actually provide information to people, so that is both the general public, but also academia, with solid, reliable, evidence-based medical studies. We live in times where it seems like, there is no truth anymore, where every side can be argued. You will have 10 scientists arguing for ivermectin, and then you will have 10 arguing against it, and it's like, as if there's no undeniable truth anymore, but there is. Simple as that. As Dr. Kampon also rightfully mentioned, and I guess there's a famous quote for this, which stems back from the 17th century, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And fear is very much what we're dealing with. The smoking gun in this case is actually one of the things that we'll be distributing information on, and we're working on an online portal which will include a forum as well, where all of you can read about all of these things. But the thing I want to highlight today is the PCR test and the fraud around the PCR test. Who of you know what a PCR test is? Let's start there. Okay, great. PCR. PCR stands for polymer chain reaction. PCR test is where all these cases come from that we hear about all the time. Cases. Let me give you a little bit of history to put this into perspective, and bear with me. Actually, the first part of this story is in 2009. In 2009, which is when we had this swine flu outbreak, there was a change to the definition of what a pandemic is. The WHO changed the existing pandemic definition of a widespread disease which causes widespread death and severe physical suffering. They removed those last two criteria. So now it's just a disease that spreads, meaning the common cold can be a pandemic. It just depends on where it spreads. So that's a crucial one. If we fast forward to 2019, December of 2019, there was an incident at the Wuhan laboratory. People panicked, but turned out that it actually wasn't really a big deal. But this was expected to be used as a springboard for what we witnessed in 2020, the pandemic, the great pandemic, right? So this pandemic, the first step of this was on the 31st of December 2019, started with a German doctor called Mr. Drosten. Mr. Drosten developed the PCR test based on the RNA sequence coming from the lab in Wuhan. This is the test that they brought to the WHO. This is the test that they used to prove that there was a widespread disease, therefore cause to declare a pandemic, which the WHO did, based on this Drosten PCR test. So, what is a PCR test? A PCR test is a valid laboratory tool. A PCR test is used to detect RNA in your body. Now, this can be useful. Have you ever had malaria? You could test this using a PCR test by finding traces of malaria RNA. What it does not do is tell you if you're infectious. So, if you come across the common cold and your immune system successfully fights off this common cold, which is a rhinovirus basically, there will be a trace of that in your body, and a PCR test will find it, and you could tell, okay, this person, is not sick, he's not infectious, but he's been in contact with this specific virus. Now, the way PCR works is basically by amplifying genetic materials, so it cycles. It's like, think of it as a pixel on your or as an image on your computer screen, right? You can zoom in, and you'll see more and more detail until you don't. And this is, by the way, and this is established literature, the inventor of the PCR test himself specified this, and Fauci agrees on this as well. He said this in public, that when you cycle these tests more than 28 times, the results basically become unusable. You cycle them above 35 cycles, you get about a 97% false positive rate. Now, guess where that draws to the PCR test was practical? 45, thank you, sir. In other words, there is no other outcome, none, than a pandemic if you test this way. Thank you. I know. It's yes. I could tell. Yes. It's Oh. Thank you. I know. It's ironic that again it started there. Yeah. It's but it's not necessarily just. It started in Europe. We can say this. Yes. Yeah. Now, you think, okay, well that sounds crazy. How can that be, right? Let me point you to a few interesting things, because you see, we live in a kind of a strange time where there's multiple elephants in the room. There are contradicting realities, simply mutually exclusive. A virus doesn't care about borders. It doesn't care about city borders, state borders, country borders, doesn't care. So, how is it that we have a deadly pandemic on our hands, yet in Florida, since August last year, everything is fine. No masks, no mandates, no distancing, no lockdowns. Everyone is fine. This is an aging population in Florida, right? Sweden, another such elephant in the room. No lockdowns, never. They're fine. Massive elephant in the room is that mortality rates haven't gone up. How can you have a global, deadly pandemic, but no extra deaths? So, these questions have to be asked, and very often these questions don't find an audience, especially not in courts of law nowadays. But there are cases, and an interesting one is from Portugal, which I believe this was around September last year. 4 German tourists are detained. They get a PCR test at the border. One of the 4 tests positive. So they're quarantined 2 weeks, and they argue against their will. So they sue the state. They sue the state of Portugal, and the courts find that indeed they are correct. A PCR test doesn't tell you anything about infectiousness. It's just simply like if you bring this to court, there's no way this thing holds up. So at least the lower courts, they agree, and they're awarded a verdict. So the state appeals. Yet in the higher courts, in the appellate court, the state loses again. It's very clear. It's impossible to argue that you can use a PCR test to detect infectiousness. This is not happening. So based on that final verdict, there's this scientist called Amari Diaz, and he then actually demands, and he has to do this through litigation as well, because initially the state doesn't want to actually provide actual numbers. So how many people did actually die of COVID or corona-related disease? So they had their official channels that reported that between January and April of this year, 17,000 people had died in Portugal. That's what you get with a proper deadly pandemic. Guess how many actually died? 157. So that's the proportion that we're talking about. Now, is that just Portugal? No. Vienna, same thing happened. Guess what the official, let's say the health organization of Sweden announced? No more PCR tests. They will no longer allow PCR tests to be done. Yesterday, very interesting news from Singapore. Very interesting. Singapore has decided that they will no longer be testing. No more case counting, they said, and they will treat corona like the flu. Very interesting language. Because that is basically what corona is, ladies and gentlemen, is a normal flu. And only 4 people in it.
Only 4 people.
I think so. Yeah, well, so, you see, but here's the thing. Again, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And to me personally, I don't think there's much value in saying, okay, now we don't have to be afraid of a virus anymore, but let's all be afraid of, unjustified authoritarianism and totalitarianism. That is still not the solution. I think that what we need to do as people is exactly what we haven't been allowed to do. Take care of our bodies, meet with our friends, go outside and live a human life. There's not so much stuff that we have to do to stop this. We need to stop doing certain things to stop this. Open your business, meet with your friends, ditch the mask, use common sense, and let's agree that we don't have to agree with each other. We don't have to vote for the same people in order to agree on very basic things. People have figured out how we can find answers to a problem, and it's called proper science. And so then when you hear the scientists say that when you question him, you are questioning science, that is betraying the very essence of science, which is to question. It's like taking a lawyer like Johnny Cochran and say, look, if you disagree with me, you disagree with law. No. Well, I can say much more, but I think I will keep it at this. Again, it's for me very inspiring. Actually, I'm very grateful to be here. I'm very grateful, and I'm not a professional speaker, which I think that I'm proving as I stand right here. But I'm a researcher, and I've been researching this for more than a year, and I've been gathering so much information that I'm thinking if people only knew this, if they just had this information, which again takes a tremendous effort, and it's not nice. It's not a fun topic to read about all day. And I'm very, very, very happy that I can share it with you all here today, because I think it is exactly small communities like this who can solve this problem. Large global systems don't seem to work very well in the long run, and I think that people have it within them to be happy, to live a conscious life, with some degree of moral courage, but especially a lot of respect for each other and for one knowledge. Yes?
Discuss more briefly on ivermectin.
Yes, okay, so ivermectin is an interesting one. What I can, for those of you who haven't heard it yet, I can definitely recommend a recent podcast by Joe Rogan. So it's the Joe Rogan Experience. It's called the Emergency Podcast. And in there he features 2 guests, an esteemed doctor who is pretty much the leading authority on ivermectin by now, including Dr. Weinstein, Dr. Brett Weinstein, who has been talking about ivermectin, and immediately his podcast was cancelled on YouTube. YouTube has it in their terms of service now, that you cannot talk about ivermectin. Now, as the individual from India very well pointed out, and it's more than anecdotal evidence, by the way, that ivermectin works. Ivermectin works. The scare for the Delta variant comes from India, but guess what? Death rates went up in India when they stopped distributing ivermectin and started vaccinating people. There's lawsuits against the WHO for crimes against humanity just for this. And this is why I believe that a few days ago they reinstated the distribution of ivermectin. But ivermectin has been distributed in India since, I don't know, it's been in circulation since 1975. So we understand. But here's the thing. In order to have emergency authorization use of your vaccine, there cannot be an alternative treatment for the thing you're trying to treat. Yes. So, and guess who is invested, by the way, in the production of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine? That's Google itself. So, this is being suppressed. Yes, ivermectin works. Yeah, absolutely. But so does, yes, ivermectin works, but so does exercise. One of the very interesting things that we've learned in this period, because a lot of research has now gone into it, is vitamin D, is how our immune system actually needs and uses vitamin D to kill off pathogens. So it's vitamin D, it's zinc, and vitamin C. That combination in and of itself, again, together with exercise and hanging out with your friends, just normal human interactions. We live in a world, fear is not healthy. It's not nice to walk around in a world where these masks imply that instead of a potential friend, everyone is a potential threat. That has consequences. It has consequences on our children too, by the way. Let's not forget them. We need to take care of them. That's a big job coming out of this. Ivermectin, supplementation. The gentleman was asking, what can I do if I don't want to take these shots? Well, just live a normal life, be happy, enjoy. Time is short, ladies and gentlemen.